Hey, thanks for joining us. This is your host, James. I'm so glad that you are joining us today, wherever you're from and however you're listening. We would love it if you would share this with your friends. It would really mean a lot to us as just we are trying to share the love and hope that we have in Jesus over the next few weeks as we navigate the coronavirus and what that means for us to be the church to our community and to the people around us. So thanks for joining us, and we'll get started. Well, hey, it is Monday. Thank you for joining us for the Rise Up podcast. We are here again. My name is James. I'm joined with Pastor Tim.
How you doing, James?
Good.
Good.
I'm really well, actually.
Good.
It was a good weekend.
It was a good weekend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. Well, hey, last week we talked about mental health and just the things that we should be doing in this isolation, reaching out to people, reaching out to God, getting honest with ourselves. We talked about anxiety and depression, addiction and compulsive behaviors. It was really good. We got a really good response.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to continue on talking about some things. Today we're going to be talking about self-care.
Okay.
And maybe it's a term that some people might be somewhat familiar with, and maybe some others not so much.
Yeah, self-care is not a popular term, but it's basically what it sounds like. It's caring for the self, and one of the reasons why we're talking about this is because of the issues that we talked about last week, and so self-care really plays into how to be preventative or proactive in some of these mental health issues that we have to deal with. And so self-care, Jesus said to love your neighbor as how?
Yourself.
As yourself. And so, this is not a selfish thing or a self-centered thing. This is self-care is really about making sure that you're refreshed and replenished and empowered to love your neighbor. Okay, so this is not about just loving yourself and making it all about you. It's actually making sure that you're taken care of to the point where you have the energy and the resources to love your neighbor, to love well.
Yeah, so what are some of the areas that maybe we could self-care or love others? Yeah,
and there's a lot of areas, but I think about Luke 2:52 where it said Jesus, I've got it written down here, Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and man. And so, these four basic areas or five different areas of wisdom I would translate into mental and emotional health. Stature would be physical well-being, and then favor with God and man, your spiritual world and your relational world, your spiritual development, and your relationships. So the question would be, how are you doing emotionally, mentally? Are you self-aware about what you're thinking and how you're feeling? Are you anxious? Are you living in negative thoughts or that sort of thing? Emotionally, are you angry, depressed? Are you anxious? That sort of thing. Emotional intelligence. Physical health, of course, is are you getting enough rest? Are you eating right? Are you exercising? Are you taking care of yourself physically? Spiritual health is your relationship with God. Are you in tune with Him? Are you spending time with Him? And then your relational world is just conflict. Or relational issues. How are you doing with keeping short accounts in your life, and how are you, how are you living well, basically. So self-care, in my mind, has two basic objectives. One, you want to live well. Everybody wants to live well.
Yep.
You want to be at peace, you want to be content, and you want to be happy. You want the abundant life that Jesus promised. The question is, how do you live in that? How do you receive that? And then the second thing is you want to love well. Jesus called us to love our neighbor, and I say a lot. We don't love well if we haven't been loved well. And self-care is about receiving that love. We are objects of love. God loves us. And so if we can understand that and live in that, we are also instruments of love. Okay, so again, it's not just about us being loved.
Right.
It's about being loved and then moving out into our world and loving others.
Right.
And so, it's basically the thing you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
And so you receive, and then you give. And so the purpose of self-care is one to benefit you so that you can thrive in life, but equally important is to benefit others so that others can be loved well by us. Because here's the thing we know: the world sucks the love out of us.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just, life is hard.
Yeah.
And then you add people to the equation.
And then you write a country song.
That's right. You have that's why country music's so popular, because life is so hard. And so, how are you loving well? And you just think, 8 weeks into this crisis, and you think about the mom at home all day with her kids, and she doesn't find time for self-care, and then things just get difficult. And it's not that we don't love people.
Right.
It's just that we haven't given attention to ourselves enough to give attention well to others. And so again, we talked about health, mental health issues last week. And so if you're depleted in any of these areas that I just mentioned, you are very vulnerable to the things that we talked about last week. If you don't self-care, then anxiety and depression, addictive behaviors are just going to be that much more powerful in your life. So you've got to be proactive to do this in healthy ways that benefit yourself and those you love. I use the illustration of a car.
Okay.
You have to change the oil, every 5,000 miles?
Supposed to.
Yeah, supposed to. Yeah. What happens if you don't change the oil in the car?
You blow an engine.
You blow an engine, and which
you
is
could
more...
ask my mom that.
Right. So which is more expensive, replacing the engine or replacing the oil?
Oh, by far the engine.
See, and that's what happens in life. We don't think that changing the oil is that big of a deal until we blow the engine.
Right. Done that a time or two.
And so, we call it maintenance, we call it preventative care, we call it self-care, call it whatever you want. But it's basically just realizing that our life, our hearts, our bodies, our minds are gifts from God. We are stewards of that life. And so he intends for us to take responsibility of that life, to steward that life well. Because, again, it goes back to we are called to love.
Yeah.
We are called to love.
One of my books that I just got done reading, he basically writes the whole book against the phrase, like, I'll live when I die. Or, I'll work, whatever.
Yeah.
You know the phrase. You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, he talks about that and just the countercultural thing to, like, rest. And, we've talked about that and self-care. It's like, why would you not rest when it's...
Well, and some people feel guilty resting.
Yeah.
Some people feel guilty self-caring because they think, I'm fine. My job is to care about other people.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, you can't care well if you've not been cared for
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And that sort of thing. So
anyways, how do we do this?
Two basic things, time with God and time with God and time for yourself. So it always starts back to, creating or revisiting, returning to those rhythms with God that replenish your soul and, spiritual disciplines, prayer, worship, Bible reading, journaling, fasting, whatever. And then time for yourself.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, James, what's some of the things that you love to do?
I love to hammock.
Okay.
Love to lay in my hammock.
All right.
I love playing video games. People might not know that about me. And I also love sports. Watching sports, playing sports.
Okay. So how do you answer the question, time for yourself? That's basically whatever it is that replenishes your soul. And when you think about those categories, mental and emotional, physical, spiritual, relational, when you think about those areas, what in those areas actually feed you rather than drain you?
So for hammocking, it's the alone time.
Yes.
It's the fact of, like, normally I don't have any devices with me. I pretty much always fall asleep. The sun it's great. Video games, it's replenishing in the fact that I usually play with friends from Ohio and
so you're connecting relationally.
Yeah, I'm connecting relationally and we're having fun and stuff like that. And then sports, it's the physical part of the self-care. The exercise, all that kind of stuff. And
the endorphins.
And the competition.
Yeah.
Love the competition.
Well, for me, it's running, reading, and traveling. Running, reading, and traveling. And those three things replenish my soul. If I can get away and do that, any one of those three things. And right now, the weather has been not really conducive outside to do a lot of running. And so I can feel it in my own spirit. When I don't run consistently, I feel it emotionally and mentally. And so this is a real thing.
Right.
Self-care is a real thing. And so back to time with God and time for yourself. And here's the thing about time: these kind of things have to be scheduled, because again, when it comes back to self care, we either we either don't think it's important,
Yeah.
or we just don't schedule the time for it.
When we do our family meeting on Sunday nights. We just talk about everything that needs to be talked about for the week. We put in, when we meal plan, we know who's cooking dinner and who's cooking what. Right now with Elliot, Tacey's trying to cook 2 meals a night or a week. And then we put in solitude times. How much time does Tacey need to get away from Elliot? Cooking's a great part of that, by herself or whatever. I have solitude time. I put my workout in there, that kind of stuff. And if we didn't do that, it would never happen.
You've got to put it on the calendar, or it will not happen. So I would suggest, and other people have talked about an hour a day, a day a week, Sabbath. Sabbath was made for us.
Yes.
To detach from the world. A weekend, a month, or a quarter, however you want to do that, and then a week or 2 weeks a year. And again, that if you leave it to burnout doesn't make an appointment.
Nope, it just happens.
It just happens.
Yep.
It's like, the car doesn't tell you tomorrow, if you don't replace the oil, I'm gonna burn out.
Happens.
It just happens. Yeah. And so in order for those not to happen, then you've got to make appointments.
Yep. You guys
daily, weekly, quarterly, and annually.
Yeah.
To self-care and to allow yourself to be loved.
I was reading about vacation.
Yeah.
We love to vacation. We all do. But the average American takes more weekend vacations than any, I think the average vacation takes three days, which is crazy. But you don't actually start to rest until day 8 of a vacation.
And I found that out about, 8 or 10 years ago. We would always take 1 week at a time. And by the time I felt like I was completely rested, we were packing up to come home.
To come back. Yep.
And so, you have to be attentive to your body.
Yeah.
And what it needs for rest and relaxation.
Use your vacation time.
Yeah.
So go back for a moment. What does self-care actually do for us? At the end of the day, bottom line, what does it do for us?
Lasting sustainability. It helps us to endure those pressure times that come, that are unannounced and unscheduled. It reminds us that we're not in control.
Yep.
We take a break, telling us that God is still going to, He's still in charge.
Yeah.
And it helps us to be present. Again, when your energies are drained, it's hard for us to be patient with people and compassionate with people when you're tired. And burned out. And the bottom line is being able to love well. And you can't love well if you've not been loved well. So.
One of my friends always says, I don't love my kids. I hardly ever love my kids when we're rushing to put our shoes on to run out the door because we're late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's good stuff.
Self-care.
Self-care. Thanks for sharing that, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's everything I've been reading, obviously. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today for the Rise Up podcast. We'll be back Wednesday. Be a little different. Don't forget, Wednesday we're actually going to do a Zoom prayer night as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really excited about that.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
So
we did one last week.
Yeah.
Want to invite you to that.
Yeah.
So check us out. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.